The Lernax defense barrier was more than a shield. It was a testament to the unassailable power of the Yarvith Empire. Stretching across the atmosphere of Yarvith Prime, their capital planet, the shimmering, translucent dome had withstood the unimaginable. It had absorbed the shockwaves of collapsing stars, diffused planet-cracking antimatter detonations, and thwarted every weapon of mass destruction in recorded galactic history. To the galaxy, the Lernax barrier was not just technology. It was a symbol of the Yarvith's supremacy, an omnipresent reminder that their rule was absolute. In the shadow of such indomitable strength, humanity seemed insignificant. The Galactic Union had allowed humanity into its ranks only a century ago, more as an afterthought than a necessity. While other species developed fleets of warships powered by quantum drives and weapons designed to manipulate spacetime, humans clung to what the galaxy derisively called primitive tactics. Railguns, missiles, and kinetic weapons, brutal, effective, and utterly outdated in the eyes of the galaxy. But what humanity lacked in sophistication, they made up for in adaptability. And the Yarvith had begun to notice. The war started simply enough. The Yarvith Empire, expanding as it always had, demanded Earth's unconditional surrender. Humanity, to their credit, refused. For the Yarvith, crushing Earth would be nothing more than a warning to other fledgling species. The first skirmishes were as one-sided as predicted. Yarvith fleets obliterated human defenses in orbit around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Cities on Earth were burned from orbit as humanity's scattered fleets fell back, regrouping for what would inevitably be their last stand. Yet, against all odds, humanity endured. They adapted. They struck Yarvith supply lines, employed guerrilla tactics, and used their primitive weaponry in ways no Yarvith strategist could have predicted. The Yarvith, unaccustomed to prolonged resistance, became irritated. Their annoyance turned to anger when a human strike force infiltrated one of their orbital command stations, stealing critical data on the Lernax barrier itself. Now, in a hidden base on the dark side of the moon, Earth's remaining leaders gathered in desperation. "We can't win this war by fighting their fleets head-on," General Ramon said, pacing at the front of the war room. His voice was resolute but tinged with exhaustion. Holographic projections of the galaxy's most infamous planetary shield hung above the table, spinning slowly. "The Lernax barrier makes Yarvith Prime untouchable. If we can't break it, we lose. Simple as that. We've thrown everything at that shield," Admiral Decker countered, slamming a fist onto the table. "Our missiles, our railguns, hell, we even tried EMP warheads. Nothing works. It absorbs or disperses energy like it's nothing. That's because we're thinking like them." The voice came from Dr. Elena March, a physicist whose sharp mind had kept humanity's dwindling fleet running. Her tone was calm, almost defiant. She tapped her tablet, and the hologram shifted to display a high-speed simulation of a projectile smashing into the shield. "The Lernax barrier is designed to counter energy-based attacks. But it has one fundamental vulnerability: it still operates in the physical universe. If we hit it with a purely kinetic attack, it may not be able to handle the energy transfer." Decker scoffed. "A kinetic attack? Against that thing? Do you have any idea how fast we'd need to hit it? It's suicide." "No," March said. Her eyes locked on the projection. "It's a chance. Our only chance." The room fell silent. The idea was absurd, practically laughable. But as the leaders stared at the simulations, a flicker of hope began to take root. "We'd need something massive," Ramon muttered. "Dense, fast, and able to survive the trip. And someone to guide it," March added. "An automated system won't adapt fast enough to their defenses. We'll need a human pilot." The room grew colder. Everyone knew what that meant. "I'll do it." All heads turned toward Captain Elizabeth Harper. She was seated in the corner, her dark eyes fixed on the hologram. Harper was a legend among pilots, renowned for her precision and nerves of steel. She had lost her entire squadron during the Battle of Europa, sacrificing everything to buy time for Earth's civilians to evacuate. "This mission is impossible without someone willing to give everything," Harper continued. Her voice was calm, steady. "If it's between my life and humanity's survival, there's no choice to make." The room erupted in protests, But Harper silenced them with a raised hand. "You all know I'm right. Let me do what I was born to do." As the room settled, Rahman spoke. "All right, we'll build the weapon." He pointed to the hologram, now depicting a massive tungsten-clad projectile. "We'll call it Thor's spear. Let's make the Yarvith remember what humanity can do when our backs are against the wall." Humanity's final gamble had begun. The construction of Thor's spear began immediately, an endeavor born of desperation and ingenuity. In a hidden dockyard orbiting Earth, humanity pooled its remaining resources, salvaging materials from abandoned colonies, wrecked ships, and even repurposing Yarvith technology. The spear would be a testament to humanity's resilience, a hybrid of brute force engineering and the adaptability that had kept them alive this long. At its core, Thor's spear was simple in concept. A massive, tungsten-clad projectile designed to deliver a single, devastating kinetic impact. But it was much more than just a chunk of metal hurtling through space. Encased within its shell were primitive thrusters for course corrections, a reinforced cockpit for the pilot, and a fusion core to ensure it reached the speeds necessary to breach the Lernax barrier. It was primitive by galactic standards, yet terrifyingly effective if it worked. Captain Elizabeth Harper oversaw every detail of the construction. This wasn't just another mission to her. It was personal. Every weld, every system test, every recalibration was a step toward avenging her fallen squadron and protecting the people of Earth. "Why not an AI pilot?" an engineer asked one day, watching Harper inspect the cockpit. "Because AI can't improvise," she said without looking up. "The Yarvitha's defense systems adapt too quickly. A human mind is unpredictable, our only edge in this war." Besides, she turned to face the engineer, her expression unwavering. "I wouldn't trust this mission to anyone or anything else." Harper's dedication inspired the entire crew. They worked tirelessly, pushing past exhaustion, driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. Every rivet, every circuit, every inch of the spear was a testament to their determination. Humanity's survival depended on this one chance. Meanwhile, Yarvith intelligence operatives caught wind of humanity's strange new project. Yarvith generals dismissed it as another futile effort. "A kinetic weapon? What are they, cavemen?" One general sneered during a strategy meeting. The Yarvitha's arrogance blinded them to the truth, that humanity's so-called primitiveness was their greatest strength. As the spear neared completion, Harper was subjected to grueling training. Though she was already one of Earth's most skilled pilots, this mission required something more. She practiced maneuvers in simulated environments, learning how to navigate through swarms of enemy fighters and bypass advanced defense systems. Every simulation ended with the same outcome. Her survival was not part of the plan. Harper had made her peace with that. In quiet moments, she would sit alone in her quarters, staring out at Earth through the viewport. She thought of the people she was fighting for, the children playing in the streets, the families clinging to hope, and the billions who would never know her name. On the eve of the launch, the crew gathered to say their goodbyes. Harper stood before them, clad in her flight suit, her gaze steady. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about all of us. Humanity doesn't surrender. Not to the Yarvith, not to anyone. I'm not just a pilot today. I'm a weapon, and I swear I'll hit my mark." As Thor's spear was prepped for launch, a single message was broadcast across Earth. For humanity, the launch of Thor's spear was both a marvel and a gamble. Humanity's largest railgun, built from scavenged orbital platforms and stretched beyond its limits, fired the spear with a burst of kinetic energy that shook the stars. Captain Elizabeth Harper sat in the reinforced cockpit, every muscle in her body pressed against her restraints as the projectile tore through space at unimaginable speeds. Her oxygen supply was limited, her systems rudimentary compared to the Yarvitha's sleek technology. But her focus was unshakable. The first leg of the journey was deceptively quiet. The vacuum of space stretched endlessly before her, the target planet a distant speck of light. Harper sensors picked up the faint hum of Yarvith communication relays scrambling to respond to the anomaly. She knew they wouldn't ignore this for long. "They've seen me," Harper murmured to herself as warning lights flickered across her console. Moments later, the Yarvith fleet arrived. Dozens of sleek warships unfolded from hyperspace, their hulls shimmering with energy fields. Automated drones swarmed ahead like locusts, filling the void with flashes of light as their weapons charged. Harper gripped the controls, her mind racing. The first volley struck hard, a coordinated barrage of energy beams that would have vaporized a lesser craft. But Thor's spear wasn't built to dodge. It was built to endure. The tungsten shell held firm, absorbing the heat and pressure. Harper fired small thrusters, shifting the spear's trajectory just enough to throw off the precision of the enemy's targeting systems. As the drones closed in, Harper activated the spear's defensive measures, improvised explosive charges that detonated in proximity, scattering shrapnel through the swarm. The cockpit shook violently with each detonation, but the path ahead remained clear. Her comm crackled to life with the voice of Admiral Decker, relayed from the human fleet still fighting a desperate diversionary battle near Mars. "You're doing great, Harper," he said, his tone grim but resolute. "Just keep them chasing you. We'll hold them off as long as we can." "Understood," Harper replied, though her chest tightened at the thought of her comrades fighting against impossible odds. As the spear approached the Yarvith capital planet, the Lernak's defense barrier activated. The shield shimmered like a vast aurora, its energy rippling outward in waves. Harper's instruments screamed warnings as the shield began to emit localized distortions, attempting to destabilize her trajectory. This was the true test. The shield was adapting, reacting to her every move. Harper's hands flew across the controls, manually adjusting the spear's course. Every adjustment was a gamble. One wrong calculation and the spear would veer off target, ending the mission in failure. The Yarvith fleet pressed harder, closing in from all sides. Harper could see their fighters now, sleek and impossibly fast. She knew she couldn't outrun them. With a deep breath, she triggered the spear's final thruster stage, pushing it beyond its designed limits. The acceleration was brutal, pinning her back into her seat, but it gave her the final burst she needed to reach the shield's edge. The planet loomed ahead, and the shimmering wall of the Lernak's barrier filled her view. Harper's voice was steady as she whispered to herself. For Earth, the spear plunged forward, leaving the pursuing Yarvith ships far behind. The moment had arrived. Captain Elizabeth Harper gritted her teeth as the shimmering surface of the Lernak's barrier grew larger in her view. Every sensor in Thor's spear was blaring warnings. Energy distortions, heat spikes, gravitational anomalies. The Yarvith shield wasn't just a defense. It was a living, reactive system, designed to absorb, deflect, and destroy anything that dared to breach it. But Harper wasn't piloting just anything. She was guiding humanity's last hope, and failure wasn't an option. Behind her, the Yarvith fleet was relentless. Their drones and warships unleashed barrages of energy beams and plasma bolts, most missing by fractions of a degree thanks to her erratic course adjustments. The few that landed scorched the spear's outer shell, turning parts of the tungsten plating molten, but the projectile held. Warning: structural integrity at 72%, her onboard system droned. Harper ignored it. Her hands danced across the controls, her mind hyper-focused. The Lernak's barrier now filled her entire viewport, a rippling field of light and energy that seemed to hum with raw power. The shield began its countermeasures. Tendrils of energy arced out like lightning, striking the spear with precision. The impacts sent violent vibrations through the cockpit, causing sparks to erupt from panels and instruments to flicker erratically. Harper's breathing quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Come on, hold together," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the alarms. She activated the final phase of the spear's systems, the kinetic reinforcement core. The fusion reactor at the heart of the spear began to overload, channeling every ounce of its remaining power into forward momentum. The thrusters burned white-hot, the tungsten shell glowing like a falling star. The Yarvith had never faced an attack like this. Their shield was designed to counter energy weapons, not raw, unrelenting force. As the spear collided with the barrier, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The impact was cataclysmic. A deafening crack reverberated through the void as the spear's momentum transferred into the shield. For a moment, The Lernax barrier flared brighter than a star, rippling and warping under the strain. Then, impossibly, cracks began to form. Inside the cockpit, Harper screamed as the force of the collision tore through the sphere. Panels exploded, flames licked at her flight suit, and the entire structure groaned as it began to break apart. She knew this was the end, but her mission was accomplished. The shield shattered. On the surface of Yarvith Prime, billions of Yarvith citizens stared in disbelief as pieces of the Lernax barrier rained down like shards of glass. Their invincible defense, the symbol of their empire's supremacy, was gone. In her final moments, Harper felt a strange peace. She had done the impossible. Humanity had a chance. Her last thought was simple: we fight. We survive. Then, the cockpit disintegrated in a blinding flash of light, and Captain Elizabeth Harper became a legend. As news of the Lernax barrier's destruction spread, humanity's forces rallied. The Yarvith, stunned and humiliated, scrambled to recover. For the first time in their history, the galaxy realized that the unthinkable had happened. The Yarvith were vulnerable. Harper's sacrifice ignited a fire across the stars. Humanity, once seen as primitive and insignificant, had proven that even the strongest could fall to the determination of the desperate. The war was far from over, but hope had been restored. And hope, humanity had learned, was the most powerful weapon of all.